Welcome, friends. We're Dana and Victoria, and this is Reconnecting with Pleasure, a podcast that helps you find more joy, presence, and so much pleasure by reconnecting with yourself and your desires.
We're two moms, coaches, and all around badass bitches who are obsessed with changing rules and always seeking more.
More joy, more fun, more orgasms, more pleasure, more eating.
And we want you to have it all too.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Reconnecting with Pleasure podcast. This is Victoria and Dana.
Yes, Victoria and Dana. I don't know if you could tell our energy levels from last episode to this episode already, but it's funny because this episode is titled Be Slow. And so I woke up this morning and I'm feeling a little slow.
We're also recording at an hour that for us is very early. We don't generally record in the morning, and it is a Saturday morning at about 9:30. And even my partner, I was like, okay, I'm going to hop on with Dana. And they were like, that's so unlike you and Dana, so early in the morning. And so when we got on and we were just chatting before we hit record, like, I'm a little slow this morning. We're just emerging. I'm just emerging too. Well, we're going to talk about going slow. So it's kind of perfect.
Yeah, we're just going to go. Here we are doing that thing where we're going to talk about being slow and radical reconnection with going along with our new theme for our mini series. Mini-series. And so take us off. Take us away,
I'll
Victoria.
take us away. I'll take us away. We, when we started talking about radical reconnection, we're like, Dana brought that phrase. What if we talk about radical reconnection with pleasure and with ourselves? I'm like, oh, that's good. And the first thing that I thought is we have to talk about slowing down because
Mhm.
I think it is impossible to radically do anything without pause. Well, I shouldn't say anything because there's lots of radical things that happen when we go real fast, but
Mhm.
speeding, that's what just jumped to mind. But it's when we're thinking about like pleasure and reconnection, um, I'm like, I think we need to start with slowing down. And we both just were like, yes, yes,
Mhm.
because our lives are on autopilot for a million reasons, both like biological and societal. But, we are there, we are all navigating a lot of demands and a lot of roles. And our brains are designed to accommodate that by sliding into sort of autopilot. And so, if we want to change the way that we always do things, we have to slow down enough to notice the way we always do things, which I actually think is kind of the hardest part of all of this.
It is. And when you're slowing down and when you're being intentional and you're noticing all of the things that you don't usually notice when you're moving so fast, when you're rushing around, when you're like, oh shit, I have meetings back to back, or I have commitments right after work or all weekend or whatever. Like commitments, those are going to keep coming. But when you take a moment to just breathe, to just notice what's around you, to notice how you're interacting with what's around you. It's amazing what you can learn. The other day, I was talking to my mom. I think it was Wednesday evening. I don't remember, Wednesday or Thursday evening. And I was like, "Oh, I can't wait until Friday. I'm just ready for the week to be over." She's like, "Why are you rushing it? Life goes too fast when you're elderly like me." I mean, it went into a different direction.
Doesn't it always?
As it as it tends to do. But it was also a really good reminder when you're always rushing and when you're always like, "Oh, I can't wait until," you miss what's happening right today. You're missing what's happening right in front of your face.
Mhm. And even when the commitments are, I got to pick the kids up from school and then I've got to go to this game or this practice and I've got to make dinner and I've got to make sure everyone does their homework. And Sometimes you would because when you were saying that, I'm like, I don't have a lot of commitments, but I have a lot of commitments.
Mhm. Mm. Same, and I'm not always, um, rushing, but I think that I do procrastinate, and
Mhm.
then my procrastination turned into rushing
Mhm.
in ways that then make me feel frazzled, and yeah.
For me, it's like, I put this pressure on, like, I have to have a routine and, like, the kids are gonna need to know what to expect, and so I have to make a plan. I have to have a plan. I have to have
Mhm,
a plan. It's like this narrative that I have for myself that I have to have a plan. But then once
mhm.
I have the plan, I, like, get myself so wound up around the plan, but I think one of the ways that I have been trying to practice radical reconnection is even so yeah, I have to prepare meals for the children. So does it have to look a certain way? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, there are times like when I had no kids where I would eat a glass of wine and microwave popcorn, like Olivia Pope style for dinner. And like that doesn't fly with children, right? And so I think that I started to notice that it would be a time where I would get more stressed because I would get a little overstimulated by all the things and
Mhm,
overwhelmed, or I'd feel resentful. Like, I don't want to be doing this, but I have to do this for you guys.
mhm,
And a way when I slowed down to notice, like, wait, every time I'm cooking dinner, I'm getting cranky. Like, what's going on here? And I started putting on different playlists and using a different light in the kitchen and like planning what I was going to cook differently. And little things like putting on a good like 90s playlist on Spotify while I'm making dinner helps a ton. And it helps me find what would be what where can I find pleasure inside of this thing that is not pleasurable for me to do? Some people love to cook. It's not my thing, so I don't find that part to be particularly pleasurable.
You know I don't. I
I
may have
know.
said it already about 15 times over our 42 previous episodes of Reconnecting with Pleasure podcast that although I can cook, I just don't have the desire to do it in ways that I used to. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of that comes from the on demand. I have a kid who is extremely regimented, and every day there is not a day that goes by where he will not ask, "What's for dinner?" before lunch. What's for lunch before he's eaten like, just and it drives me bonkers for someone who's more like, I don't know, when I get to the kitchen at 5, or whatever time, because it's not just at 5, when I there and I will figure it out. I wish I were a meal planner. That I wish I were, because I do think that it would decrease like a lot of the stress and anxiety that comes with meals. And I think would have it would be completely fine. And it would just bring him so much joy to know what his meals were.
Mhm.
But this does not have that kind of mama.
Well, I've recently been trying really hard to lean into the planning
Mhm.
because I'm now cooking for 4 children sometimes. They're all
That's
asking what's for dinner. And at the same time, it's like who has whatever appointment, therapy, homework, game. And so I was noticing that by the time the afternoon came, the idea of what will I make for dinner was so overwhelming that I was like, so I've started on the weekend trying to make a plan and both to radically reconnect with my budget because it is pleasurable for me to have money left over.
yes.
But also because I noticed that it reduced my stress to already have a plan that got made in a moment that wasn't a stressful moment where I wasn't already feeling depleted and tired. Um, and it does help. Although what I've had to learn is sometimes just because I say we're going to have like whatever, chicken and macaroni and cheese, if the day gets to the point where I'm like, there is just not a damn chance in hell that I have the capacity to make all those items right now, we are going to allow room to adapt.
Mhm.
but it's in those things, right? Because I think it's like, where does the pleasure lie? And maybe it's short-term pleasure, maybe it's long-term pleasure. I don't find it pleasurable to make a meal plan, but I find it pleasurable to have a meal plan later in the week. So I think that to me is the stuff about slowing down is like, what would help this moment feel better? And
Mhm,
can I do that for myself? And it feels actually now really loving to reasonably look at, can I go to the store? Can I pay, 10 extra bucks to have the groceries delivered because this week going to the store is not worth those 10 extra dollars in my energy? Just like making those slowed down
mhm,
decisions is helping a lot. But I first had to pause and be like, wait a minute, this something here is not working. I need to find a better way.
mhm. Yeah, I want so badly to make a meal plan and, like, meal prep, not just the plan. I think that if I meal prepped on, like, a Sunday, the week would feel so much better, but the
Mhm.
idea of spending a day that I don't have any other commitment, I don't have work, I don't like, to take that offline to prep
I
for
know.
that the part for me, and I that would make that week that much more pleasurable,
Mhm.
and it doesn't have right? Like, need or want anything that is, undoable for me, but my girl is pretty easy. Uh,
Do you wanna just say kind of what you said again? Because it cut out enough that I couldn't follow you exactly.
Absolutely.
The go all the way back to, like, I desperately want to not just meal plan, but meal prep.
I desperately, desperately want to not just meal plan, but to meal I want it all done. I just don't want to take a whole day offline to make it happen. If someone I know that there are, like, deliveries, like those delivery services or whatever. I've considered it, I've just never really looked deeply into it, and I think it would make my life so much more and it's still we still gotta cook it.
Yeah, but if all the onions are chopped and things are measured and everything, the cooking's easier probably. I was just thinking, like, when you were saying that, why don't you try one of those? Maybe it'd be pleasurable for you to try it for a week or 2. You can usually get a free
Right.
trial.
I think I will.
Friends, hit
I
us
think
up
I
with your free
will.
promo codes. Like, let's give Dana all the details on what what meal service you like and a promo code.
I love a good promo code, so
Don't we
if you
all?
do if you yeah, so if you have them, I would be extremely grateful. I'm definitely willing to try it, and I would imagine that it's not that much more expensive than, like, that moment when I where I give up and I end up ordering out.
Listen, that's just it, right? Is the other thing I was gonna say, Dana, is like, what if it didn't have to be the whole day? This is what I try to tell myself too. Like, as I hear myself talking to myself in extremes, and again, when I slow down, I'm like, okay, so I'm not gonna actually spend the whole day meal prepping, but could I spend an hour? And if I spent an hour, would that then save me more than an hour later? Because
Mhm.
by 5 o'clock on a weekday, it's going to be take me way longer than what it's going to take me on a Sunday at I don't know 3 in the afternoon.
Right.
And like that's where I started with like, could I? Because I hate giving up good weekend time for anything. I mean, like
Right.
I have to really find joy in what I'm doing to give up good weekend time. And, like, the 20 minutes it takes me to make the meal plan and the grocery list is, like, really well spent, and if I added an hour of chopping up some things so that they're prepped later in the week, I don't know, just saying.
Mhm. You are not wrong.
Yeah, the words that every Leo loves to hear. Thank you.
You are you are absolutely right that and yes, and so that is one of the things that I catastrophize in my head, like, I make it so much bigger than what it is, and th so to bring this back around to to being slow, being intentional so that you can be slow, it makes sense for those who are like, "What happened here?
Yeah.
Where did you go?" Um, it definitely makes sense, and this is something that I can do, and hopefully did I freeze again?
No, you're good.
Okay, and hopefully, I don't know, like, this can be applied to many areas of our life,
I
right?
actually think it's a perfect example of what we're
Yeah.
talking about here because number 1, I think it's relatable. I think many of us could agree that the worst part of adulting is, like, paying bills and having to decide what's for dinner every fucking day for
Mhm,
eternity.
mhm,
Um, but it applies anywhere. And the slowing down is in the part where you notice that something is doesn't feel good or pleasurable and that maybe it's bigger than it needs to be. You know, you just said that, right? Like I make this to be so big in my mind and our brains are fucking liars. So just because something feels really big in our mind doesn't mean it's actually going to be so hard. And I was literally just working through this with my coach this week about like some project. I'm like, I just avoid it and I avoid it and I avoid it because I'm so scared that it's going to be so hard and I'm going to feel stupid and I'm gonna. And then I sat
mhm.
down last night and I did it and I sent her these like 14 text messages of like, I'm so good. I did it. And, like, I share that part too because sometimes, like, Dana, I would love for you to tell me when you meal prep or when you get a service or when you do something so we can celebrate that you're making like, you push through that, like, big brain talk narrative
Mhm,
and switched it up. But I think this is, like I think this can apply to so many things and how we slow down. I think about it like what gets in the way of me feeling pleasurable. Sometimes stress is a big one. I don't feel
yeah,
sexy when I'm stressed. I don't feel relaxed when I'm stressed. I don't feel like I have time to go slow when I'm stressed. And usually, what all that requires is me shutting the fuck down and slowing really far down to make an intentional plan so I can do things differently, like the next day or the
mhm,
next hour or whatever.
mhm. Yeah.
And
It's
sometimes gotta
all
be a little radical.
yeah, it's all figure outable. Mm. Like, preparing my mom used to prepare her clothes for the whole week. I remember that growing up. She was an
Mhm,
ironer,
mhm.
and would iron every single outfit for the entire week, so she just had to get up, take her shower, get dressed, and go.
My mom always pulled her clothes out the night before too, and now that you say that, I'm like, yeah, because she didn't like having to be rushed in the morning or having to make decisions in the morning.
Mhm.
So she
Yeah.
would do the same, just get up, shower, get dressed, have her coffee. She was a tea drinker, but yeah,
Mhm.
that's it.
Right. And another thing that I think about doing, right? Preparing your coffee in the morning, the night before. So you just get up, heat your water or whatever method it is that you're doing, flip your switch and go.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's so many things that we could do to almost automate our lives so that it's not so much work in the moment.
And it can be big things like meal prepping and little
Mhm.
things like you just said, like, how can I set my coffee up in the morning? I really like gentle mornings, and I find the brightness in the morning to be so this is gonna sound so dramatic, but it really is how it feels. I find it to be so jarring to my nervous system, like, to wake up with somebody turning on a light
Mhm.
or to wake up and have to turn on a bright light feels so offensive in my body.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people see like I've posted on social media, I have lots of candles and I wake up and light candles. And people always are like, "Oh, that's so romantic. That's so this." It actually it is all of those things and it feels like magic in the morning and it feels sweet and romantic and sexy. It
Mhm.
started because I hated the fucking light, but I needed to not be in the dark. And then I was like,
Mhm.
what if I just try lighting these candles that I have all over anyway? And now it's become like kind of a morning ritual, but it started by just recognizing I don't like turning on the light in the morning. And especially in the winter, it is dark as hell and I need to get up. So I need a light
Mhm.
and let's try this instead. And I think it's turned into a really pleasurable ritual that now that I live with my partner, even sometimes she wakes up and lights my candles for me. And I'm like, oh, that's the most loving thing ever because also she's learned, I'm like, "Don't you dare turn on that light.
Better not.
It is not kind to me."
No.
But I think it can be big things and small things. We just have to notice
Mhm.
what feels
Yeah.
good.
Right. Notice what feels good. I wake up and I don't get up. I wake up and I probably wake up about an hour before I actually need to get up so that I can lay there and read and just, like, activate my brain without having
Mhm.
to get into whatever it is that my day holds for me. And that brings me so much pleasure, so much joy without having to, like, just jump up. Then there's no worse feeling to me than, like, at moment, like, you have to wake up and immediately hop out of bed and immediately start getting ready, and you're out of the door 30 minutes after you just woke up. That is my worst nightmare. That does n
Does not feel pleasurable.
not at all. Not at all.
And it's
And
funny
there
because my partner's worst nightmare, not exactly, but like she cannot stand just laying in the bed in the morning.
I love that for her.
Me too, but I've had to learn how to be able to be like, we can both get our needs met here. I need you to not turn that big light on when you jump out of
Mhm.
the bed and go work out and do your thing. And I need you to know that I am going to be a better human if I lay here quietly while you do that. And then link back up and it'll be great.
Yep.
So this is
And
not to say that you have to wake up early to lay in the bed to have pleasure. It's the reason I'm saying that is the point is here to say what feels pleasurable to you or notice someplace where it right now doesn't feel pleasurable. Like nothing about this feels good. What inside of that can you control? And how can you slow all the way down to break it apart almost like Legos into little separate pieces and maybe
Mhm.
put them together in a different way or add in a different component and see. But the radical part is in the, like, noticing, "Wait a minute, maybe it doesn't have to suck like this all the time. Maybe I can do something different," and then slowing down enough to put the different things into practice.
Thanks. So, Victoria, what's one thing that you're gonna do that's your radical reconnection with being slow?
I am this is gonna sound weird, but I am, blocking my calendar, not like blocking things off, but with projects and things. So I'm
Mhm,
planning things that I have to do because what I find is that I either have a bunch of calls
mhm,
and then in between those calls, if I have a minute, it's like I'm eating or I'm like, huh, and then I'm not getting projects done
mhm,
or I don't have any calls. And then I'm like, oh, I have all the time in the world. Let me go to Costco. And then I'm going to, do, and
mhm.
or I avoid because the projects feel too big. So I am committed to breaking things down into actionable to do lists and then finding the time where I'm saying at 10 a.m., I'm going to spend an hour and do this thing before my call with Dana at 11. Um,
I love that.
doesn't sound like slowing down, it sounds like speeding up, but it's actually just making a plan so that my
Mm,
energy can be, um, intentionally spent and not depleted all at once because I'm procrastinating at the last minute and having to be frantic.
right, and that's the thing, it's the procrastination that then leads to the frantic,
Yeah,
and that's what we're trying to avoid.
exactly. What about you,
Yeah.
Dana? What's one way you're doing it?
I mean, we spent so much time on talking about my meal prepping that, I think that is what that's what I'm gonna work on. And when you said, like, all you need like, if you just spent an hour, right? Like, it's not I'm not making bread from scratch and watching it rise. Although
Because
there
that's
is
not
a
pleasurable.
past
Yeah.
right, there is a past life Dana that would have done that and would have found a lot of joy in that.
Mhm.
Today, Dana doesn't feel a whole lot of joy in that. Tomorrow, Dana might, but today Dana doesn't. And I also my kid who wants to know every single meal, 3 meals beforehand, um, also really enjoys cooking. And
Mm.
so I need to I think if I prepped it, he would be 100% okay with just like, "I have it from here, mommy." Awesome.
Mhm. There
And
you
so
go.
also right, and so finding I guess I would implore people, find the people in your house who love to do a thing,
Mhm,
engage them in that task. I
mm.
think a lot of times, especially with children, some of the things feel almost like more work to have them help you than to not.
But that doesn't it's not more work forever. It's like
It's not.
once you teach them, it can be a handoff, and I think I've had to
Mhm.
remind myself that often. And even I have, a kiddo who without with too much unstructured time can lead to other problems, right? Like, it doesn't work necessarily.
Yeah.
And so I think that for a while that made me feel like I had to be like the cruise director constantly with an activity. And instead, I've learned to say, like, how about you come help me? Because he also likes to cook and bake. And if I give him, like, how about you make the pancakes and I'll make the bacon and eggs? And then there we go. Not only did I structure the time and he is help, I got help, he got help, right? Like,
Mhm.
there are lots of ways that we can loop in the kids that feels really good for them and for us.
Yeah, and luckily his dad already did the hard part and taught him how to cook.
Beautiful. Way to go, daddy.
So I didn't actually have to do that part. And so I feel like I could reap the benefit of that.
Somewhere in there, Dana, all I can think is like that's because men know how to ask for support in ways that women don't.
Right?
Shocking.
Absolutely. But
Friends, what's one way you are going to slow down and notice how you could find a more pleasurable approach to lifing?
lifing, because lifing is still gonna be lifing all around you, to you, with you, and we just need to figure out how we want to be a part of that.
Exactly. And share, tell us. We'd love to hear. We really, really love to hear from y'all.
So, thank you for joining us for another episode of Reconnecting with Pleasure. It is always a pleasure to hang out with you.
Always, always. See you next week.
Bye-bye.